Welcome, everybody. Pleasure to have you back over here. We are going to play a quick round of trivia while we wait for everyone to make their way over from the last session. If you know the answer, please drop it in the chat window, and the first person to answer correctly will win a CUGC charger. Go ahead and open your chat widget, and let's get ready to play some trivia. Our first question is, name the second largest city in Michigan. All right, looks like we have a winner, Jerry. Looks like it is our winner, and the answer is correct. It is Grand Rapids, Michigan, which is where I am right now. Hurrah, cold, snowy north. Please email that to katie.heidkamp@mycugc.org, and we'll get your charger over to you. Okay, on to our next one. Michigan is home to what well-known cereal company? All right, looks like we have a bunch of answers in the chat, and not sure who won that one first. Looks like Jerry. Jerry won the last one, so let's do Ken. What do you think? I'll let the ladies figure that one out on the back end, but Kellogg's is the correct answer. Okay, next we're going to have a presentation from ControlUp, so please stay tuned.
A user has an issue. ControlUp can get a screenshot of the user session to give you visibility. This user is having issues, and I'd like to troubleshoot in their session using their rights. We can start a command prompt to troubleshoot further. Security restrictions prevent us from starting the command prompt. Instead of messing with group policy objects, we can remove the session's group policy settings, and now we can start a command prompt to continue troubleshooting. The prompt is now available to walk the user through some troubleshooting steps. Once complete, we can reapply group policy with ControlUp. We have a Citrix user who put in a ticket having poor user experience. There are multiple sessions. We can start a chat with specific sessions to ensure this is the correct one. The high-level session metrics look good. Let's drill into the session and see the session processes. Sorting by CPU, we don't see anything on the Citrix side that it's causing experience degradation. Most troubleshooting tools would stop here, but not ControlUp. The end user is on an iGel device being monitored by ControlUp. ControlUp has full visibility into iGel devices. We'll tell ControlUp to navigate to the device in the console. Immediately, we can see the iGel device has high CPU utilization. However, the processes view and ControlUp highlight the root cause. WebKit web process is consuming significant resources. This process started after a recent change to turn on browser content redirection. Knowing the root cause, the admins can now work on fixing this problem. ControlUp is an excellent tool for managing your infrastructure. For example, if you select a group of infrastructure machines, you can live audit and baseline your Windows Update patches. By selecting Manage Programs and Updates and expanding Updates, then expanding Microsoft Windows, ControlUp shows you all the patches applied and any differences between the machines in a color-coded display. Metadata on the compared machines is available by clicking on a patch. To save the report on your current patch state, click Export in the upper left. ControlUp's controller engine makes it a snap to see inconsistencies in your infrastructure. But ControlUp doesn't stop there. By expanding the ControlUp console with script actions, we can list all available or approved Windows updates. In addition, the script action can also apply updates. ControlUp's grouping engine takes the output of the available Windows updates and shows you which machines require different patches. By clicking Export on the ControlUp Script Actions Result window, you can now have a complete report of patches applied and patches available. Access Solve from within ControlUp by clicking on the Solve tab and then clicking on the Solve button. This will launch ControlUp Solve, a web-based version of the ControlUp real-time console. The landing page is a high-level dashboard view, perfect for any administrator, help desk, or NOC. There are 3 dashboards available, one showing user experience metrics, one showing resource consumption, and one showing all combined metrics. Switching to Discovery View, and we have drilled into our environment for the first time. The Discovery View has a new dynamic topology bar showing your environment as clickable logical resources. Underneath is a graph view showing the aggregate of the metrics, and lastly, underneath is the real-time grid view. The classic ControlUp tree is available by clicking the Open Tree button. Just like the console today, you can click on a folder to focus the main display on those objects. Columns have been given new capabilities. Filters can be applied on a per-column basis. Here, we'll show only machines with more than 50% memory utilization. There's also a search box with free text queries. The display of the grid can be customized. The grid can be expanded to show more items by hiding the aggregate graphs. Expand it further to grid-only view, maximizing viewing of the number of simultaneous objects. Columns can be added, removed, rearranged, and the grid density can be selected between default, comfortable, and compact. Now, the real-time view is great, but what if you want to glance at what happened yesterday? Within Solve, we tie into ControlUp Insights, and we can pull recent historical data. Recent historical data goes back up to 3 days. Metrics with an Expand option will show you some additional metrics for a quick historical glance. In this view, historical data can be shown for up to 1 month ago. Try ControlUp for free at www.controlup.com.
Fantastic. Please make sure to check out ControlUp over in the sponsor booth. Next up, we have Citrix CTP Fellow Steve Greenberg, who's going to walk us through the 2021 EUC Adventure. Steve, it's all yours.
Okay, we live. Good to see you, Tim. All right, thanks all. Great to be here. It's not the same as in person, but it's good. And the last one I did in person was in Houston in March last year. It's hard to believe. And it was an incredible experience to be at the Houston Space Center and do an Excel. It was a great team, great group from Citrix and vendors and attendees, fantastic groups there in Texas. They definitely do things big in Texas. And I want to send a shout out to them now and hope that they're all doing okay in this weather and in response to the extreme cold. It's a little different doing this online. I wouldn't say a little different, a lot different. I'm known for getting in trouble at these things from doing some crazy things when we're in person and we get to be in the room and interact. And one of them is that I always arrive in the city ahead of time, and this kind of started with Patrick Coble, and we find a local bourbon, and it's a little weird here. I'm seeing my video delayed. Let me get that off my screen, make sure you can see it. And I don't know if you're seeing it backwards, but we find something local to each of the place that we're at. This is Black Mountain Distillery, which is literally around the corner from my house. And I've gotten us and some of the CUG staff in trouble a few times. So I want to publicly apologize for handing out shots in the middle of presentations and doing other crazy things. But I look forward to causing trouble in person again when we're able to. I did want to start with giving an award out to the EUC community, and I call it, I want to get my camera up, I want to make sure you can see it. I call this the 2021 Hold My Beer Award, and this is because when COVID-19 hit and really just flipped the whole world upside down and disrupted business and technology and so many aspects of our life, it really was the EUC community that was ready. And many of my clients that I work closely with and I've worked closely with for many years were able to say when the business freaked out and said, people have to go home and work, they said, hold my beer. And, you know, I was very proud of that, being in this community for so many years, more than 20 years, and seeing so many of you be able to service your organizations and your people. And it's really a big deal. So the award goes out to all of you for 2021, the Hold My Beer Award. And what that really underscored for us is the importance and the impact of EUC. Traditionally, we were kind of the nerds that were in the back room doing stuff that people didn't really know or care about, and couldn't tell what was happening. They just had to do their apps. But the COVID-19 experience really brought EUC to the forefront, and it was really moving for me personally because we were in the middle of some large projects that suddenly shifted. One of them was two companies that were doing a very complicated acquisition that was really security focused, bringing two companies together in a way that we could execute and keep some of the data and the security posture separate. And in the middle of it, we had to flip gears and send their employees to work at home. And not only did we have to do a technology flip, there just wasn't time and resource for the company to train, for HR to respond. And as geeks, experts in Citrix and virtualization and EUC, we ended up kind of helping the organization train their users. And we were on, like Zooms with end users on a lot of them, many hours of it to help them get onboarded from home. And it was such an eye-opening experience that EUC is affecting people's lives. These are people with children and having to work out of, way less than ideal situations like bedrooms and kitchens and so forth. And it was really impactful to see the role that EUC has on people and community and the economy. And that's going to be increasingly true as we go forward. So here we're going to talk about the EUC 2021 Adventure. What's coming up? Where are we at today? And it's changed a lot. One thing that comes to mind first is that 2020 forced a lot of rapid changes. So the kind of simple paradigm I keep seeing over and over is that companies had to respond to sending their people home, and they might do things like acquire a bunch of laptops and set up a VPN. And at the time, we didn't know how long you were going to go home for, so they did that, and they're still doing it. And EUC was a smaller part of that response than it probably should have been or can be going forward. So I think we're going to see a kind of a go back and a cleanup. And while it seemed like 2021 was the big year of EUC and remote work, I think it's really 2021 where we go back and make that permanent and make it solutions that last and aren't knee-jerk reactions or unmanageable. One of the things that we're seeing is that organizations that chose or were forced to do things like send complete corporate laptops home with VPNs are having now to manage apps and patches and installations and having a really hard time. And that's where the EUC community can really step in. One of the movements is also not just to do the same stuff we've been doing, but to retool and look at what would be a new, modern, better desktop. Some of the phrases we're using are like smart desktop, modern desktop, intelligent desktop. But this is the time to kind of fix and solidify that new concept. And I'll just say maybe it's a smart desktop, because it isn't really just about VDI or that silly, idea of year of VDI. Although if we're going to say year of VDI, I'll just put it out there. It probably actually is 2021, ironically. Hey, Chris, see your message there. Good to see you. So we need to have the desktop be smarter. It can't just be a hosted VDI, and that's end-user computing. End-user computing is everything. It's the endpoint. It's the local operating system. It's, increasingly like telephony and collaboration solutions, media-rich content. It's line of business applications and SaaS. And so this smart desktop that is evolving in 2021 is much more than just delivering something published. It's looking at the endpoint all the way back to the, the infrastructure and out to the cloud, and to deliver a unified solution. Now, obviously, with COVID and the new awareness of the ability to work at home, which people in our space knew for a very long time, users need to be able to work from anywhere. And that used to be a tagline, but now it's really a business imperative. And it's not just some use cases. And this is the, I always love being able to hold up a beer. So I'm going to say that's the reason for the Hold My Beer Award, was that you EUC people out in the community and out in business we're able to respond. But most organizations don't have a solution like that for every single employee. It's usually certain departments or use cases. And I think it's time now to come up with broader solutions and to think broader, and not to think of yourself as, there's desktop people and then there's Citrix people. We've got to have solutions that, come together like that. And one of them is the ability for the end user to onboard. Because one of the things that happened with COVID was the difficulty of deploying things at home. Now, we've done a lot of that. We were in this really early as the EUC community and me personally, and we've done a lot of really formal projects where big corporations, support work at home, and there's a whole vetting process, including a site survey of someone from the company comes out and checks the ergonomics and, is it quiet? Is the connectivity good? There's a formal process. And in COVID, not only was there no time and processes for people to learn how to do that, but you couldn't go into somebody's home. You couldn't come in their house while there's a pandemic going on. So part of the new characteristic is the ability for the end users to onboard themselves. The old traditional way this was done was the example of with thin client devices. We used to say, for branch offices, we would pre-stage thin clients in the closet, and something would break or you have a new user and we'd say, okay, go into the closet, take out this box, plug in the keyboard, mouse, plug it into network, power, and so forth. And that was kind of like a thin client onboarding. You see that a lot in retail. It's a very successful model. We kind of need to get that into the new way. And a paradigm that's fantastic that a lot of people are familiar with in the EUC community is the company iGel, and how they can have their thin client software on a key that can go into almost any x86 device and boot up their operating system. So that idea is maybe it's a BYOB or maybe it's a corporate asset that they ship you, but you do need to, in going forward, think about ways for the end users to really onboard, like from home or just somewhere else. And those are some interesting approaches there. The other thing is security. And we got to thank Patrick for bringing this to the EUC community a few years ago and literally traveling the country preaching it. But it's very, very serious right now. I think you all know this. I don't need to tell you, but just a simple example that came up for me was my wife got phished with a fake PayPal thing that got a browser redirect on her computer. It's a Mac desktop. And in digging into it, I figured out that they had done such a good job that they got her to subscribe to their list. And she had been receiving updates from this phishing attack, thinking it was PayPal for a while. So, and she's a savvy user, so it's getting really bad. And that's just a simple thing, but a company with hundreds or thousands of employees, some percentage is going to get that. So security now is not a nice to have or a what if. You have to be thinking that we will be compromised, and how are we positioned to minimize it and to mitigate and to deal with it and to restore, get back to operation. So we can't really emphasize that enough. It has to be an inherent design. We've heard that message from companies like Citrix that security is inherent from Microsoft in the design of software. Now that has to be the case in the design of systems that you build. Or if you're an administrator managing a system, you have to kind of re-examine your system and up the security. And Joel just commented, not if, but when. That's exactly the point, Joel. Thanks for saying that. You have to assume you will be compromised and, design your environment accordingly. So there's plenty of information about that. We can talk about that, separately. And I know we have a little Zoom roundtable afterwards. I'm happy to get into discussion on any details here at that point. The other thing is, I alluded to this earlier, that IT really now integrates with people. It's kind of funny because IT was always sort of the backroom guys and gals over the years, and not necessarily noticed or recognized or integrated. They mostly are aware of you when something's not working, but some people like to say, you don't get phone calls every morning saying, that was awesome. I was able to log in today. Thank you so much. You're amazing. But that's changing because this COVID experience I referred to, where as IT consultants and experts, we had to jump in and help end users, it's kind of bridging this. So HR, human issues, IT, they're all overlapping and they're becoming the same. And it's really important on your 2021 EUC Adventure to think about human issues, people matters, how people are doing, how what you do impacts their life. There's so many countless examples, but people having to work at home and what their access is like, the times they have to work, the impact on their children, Wi-Fi, training, making it seamless for them. It's now, it always has been, but now it's like obviously really a human issue. So put your human empathy hats on, and as you're maintaining systems and thinking about security and better desktop delivery, working from anywhere, think about the kind of the human elements that come into all this as well. It's very, very important. The next topic I wanted to bring up is where technology and industry and directions are going. And that's a big emphasis on automation and programmatic computing. And there's different ways to talk about it and to label it. But what you're mostly hear would be Devops and CI/CD. And, these are the idea of programmatic computing. It comes more out of software development, but a lot of times implementation adopts software strategies like agile and sprints and things of that nature. And that's happening now with automation and programming computer and DevOps and CI/CD coming into the way we deploy things like Citrix, especially as it becomes more cloud-based. So the simple basic example that we're all familiar with and see today would be learning PowerShell. That, as an administrator implementer, you need to be able to do things programmatically or script-based, and to do them as, command line and control those functions. But that is growing into what you normally hear of as DevOps. And, what presentation would be complete without a quote from Wikipedia? I did spare you the PowerPoint, by the way, so I'm not giving you any slides. But this is a Wikipedia quote that DevOps is a set of practices that combines software development, the dev, and the IT operations, the ops. It aims to shorten the systems development lifecycle and provide continuous delivery with high-quality software. And continuous delivery is the key. The CI/CD is continuous integration, continuous delivery. And this is where, sort of the cloud and the web scale has taken us. It's been a great development from that area, but that's all kind of bouncing back into enterprise computing. And enterprise computing is merging with cloud, but it still maintains its separate identity and its unique requirements around what has to be on premises, what's confidential data, what needs to be stored locally. There's geographic issues as well. Some countries require that any data generated there stays there. And it's becoming a more complex situation and world. But EUC is reflecting this. And I think it's really the next wave. And everybody from a career, technology development point of view should really be looking at this. In our practice at Thin Client Computing, that's what we're doing. We're developing frameworks with things like Ansible and Packer. And I don't know that it's public yet, but Stephanie and I are putting together a webinar on this topic with Joe Shank, who's kind of the master of this that I work with on a daily basis. And we're going to demonstrate it in a lot of detail and, show you how it's done and how that framework actually works. But an example that we deployed, save the date, Stephanie, for sure. An example that we deployed recently was a company that, because of the way they operate, they're kind of islands. They have 5 data centers, all with their own standalone Citrix farms, and their business case definitely justifies that. It's a valid case for standalone separate farms. And we're deploying this methodology where, she has a calendar. Okay, so it looks like we got it. That's awesome. We deployed this methodology so that we can update all the farms to a new version. And thank you, Stephanie. And do them with the same programmatic operations. So there's a library, a repository of media and configurations. There's certain product versions that we've determined, we've settled on, and we can do it the same in multiple locations the same way. Now, it does take some expertise of the kind of the senior members of the community, like a Joe Shank and a number of you who I know are on the presentation, to kind of master it. But for everyone else, normal mortals like us, and for the clients and the customers, the frameworks can be, like operated. And everyone should be learning these paradigms because it's the new way to go. And then the webinar that we're referring to here is going to be a way to really deep dive into it and see exactly how it works. But I think on a level of standardization, modernization, having methods that work on premises and in cloud and can be transferred and brought over to these new ways of doing things, it's really important to be thinking about this. So, I would just kind of look into DevOps and CI/CD and see where you can kind of really integrate that. And then the summary of these key points that I wanted to give to you is really understanding the importance of what you do. I gave some examples earlier, but end user computing is everything. It used to feel like a niche, like we could go back a really long way, like when I first started doing this, and it was, modems and things, and it was niche-y. An operation needed to access some other aspect of their business far away, and we'd remote to Citrix. And it grew in importance, but it wasn't really everything. And now, honestly, end user computing is everything. It's not just virtual desktops. It's not just hosting. It's every possible delivery method. And that's the big 2021 adventure, is that end user computing is everything from the endpoint to the most distant cloud service to the way the person's doing Zoom or WebEx or, Google Apps for Business or Microsoft Office 365, what device they're on, what's local, what's proxied, what's hosted, what's the endpoint. Can you deliver that in better ways? One of the products that we're getting involved with now is Liquid out of the Netherlands. Shout out to those guys. And they're bringing these methodologies specifically into the EUC world, where we've always had great things like, well, we can package things a certain way or use a tool on server-based computing, XenApp or XenDesktop, but it wasn't necessarily the way we did it on desktop. They're bringing some of these methodologies into a single interface, which is truly a workspace where you can go to, and regardless of the device you're on, the right things happen. So the kind of thing we're seeing in 2021 that maybe wasn't really the scope of like a Citrix person, a guy or gal, would be, I want to run this app. I come to my workspace and I'm on a device that can't run it. Well, let's be smart about it. You're on an iOS iPad, we're going to pull it off of Citrix. You're on a device that's secure, corporate, etc. You need to run this app, but it's not installed. Install it and run it. That kind of idea, this smart desktop, is what I think 2021 is all about. And it's really an indication that us EUC people have grown in scope. We're becoming very, very important to the organization, to the economy, to business, and to individuals as well. And those were all the prepared points I had. If there's any questions or discussion I can comment on now, please feel to post it. I'm checking the group chat, and there's also a Q&A, because I am actually ahead of schedule on my points. And in the meantime, if you think about it, if you have any questions, I'll show you again. Black Mountain Distillery. I vow to bring this up to Great Plains when I can come in person, and I'll get everybody in trouble, and I'm apologizing in advance to Jen and the team for what I'm going to do and get you guys in trouble. We are going to do a roundtable as well, and I am ahead of time here, so I know I'm getting a note that I have 20 minutes left. Carl, awesome discussion, Steve. Thanks for the feedback. Adam saying 2020 and 21 have been an adventure. There have been so many things to consider. Thanks, Steve. Thank you, too. I'm not really a drinker, Dwayne. He's asking if I'm into scotch. I don't actually drink, but I do occasionally like this, especially on special occasions. And I'll bring you a bottle of water, Carl. Or we'll bring you milk, a nice warm milk and a blanket for you. And what you're not going to create any virtual trouble. Well, if you have any suggestions for virtual trouble, I'd like to know them. I feel a little bit caged here. I haven't thought of a lot of ways to create trouble on the live format. This has never happened to me before that I'm done ahead of time. So if, Jen, you want to jump in, or if you want me to keep going, I will. I'm always usually have too much material.
All right. Well, thank you, Steve, for your time. I think at this point, we're going to go ahead and let everybody head on out to back to the sponsor booth. We got a couple minutes to finish up your game cards. So go ahead and get those finished up and get those submitted by 3:30 Central Time. And we will plan to reconvene the roundtables here in about another 20 minutes or so at 3:20, at which point you can go ahead and hop into Steve's room if you want. You can hop into Webster's room, or you can hop into Sarah's room. And that should be a fantastic time where you can ask questions directly to our guests today and get some answers to your most pressing questions. So, Steve, again, thank you for your time today. Appreciate you running through a 2021 EUC Adventure for us, and we look forward to seeing you guys here in another couple minutes.
Thank you.